What's going on, friends? You already know who it is. I don't need any kind of introduction. But if you read the title of this video, you know this is kind of a big thing, kind of a not so big thing. So let's preface it with this. Obviously, we know we have a lot of companies out here trying to do whatever they can to, I suppose, protect themselves and work on other ways to, I guess, work with content creators, work with, you know, influencers, etc., and they're trying to do what they think is in their best interest to protect themselves and somewhat protect the content creators, and at the same time, if they see fit, you know, maybe go after content creators or what have you. So Capcom has released their newest guidelines for content creators, and some of it is good, some of it's bad. I'm kind of in the middle with it. I think a lot of it makes sense. I don't think that too much of it is bad. I do think it's gonna piss off a lot of people. I spent well over like maybe a good hour and some change just kind of looking over what people have been saying on Twitter, because that's where they posted it recently. There's a lot of people who are angry in the comments, that's for sure, but after reading through it myself, I really just don't think it's that bad. I think a lot of people might be overreacting a little bit. I don't want to say people don't have a reason to be upset, because there are some things that I do feel are a bit upsetting, and I'm going to get to in a second. But I feel like there's a reason for this. You know, there's just been a lot of like issues with DMCA and music and what's safe, what's fair use, what's not fair use. There's just all kinds of just nonsensical things that have been happening with that. And yeah, this just kind of adds to it, you know, especially with everything's been happening. DMCA, just I don't even know where to like begin, but I don't think I need to go into that. Instead, let's go into what's happening here with Capcom. Okay, so here we have their video policy. Obviously, they have a PDF version as I set up here, but let's get into the guidelines. All right. You may make walkthroughs, tutorials, let's play, speedruns, reviews, reactions, instructionals, and other commentary style videos using our game footage to be shared on YouTube, Twitch, your website, or other video streaming sites. The associated step-by-step commentary should be tied to the live gameplay being shown and should provide instructional or educational value or other benefits. I'm okay with that. This doesn't really mess with too much of anything, especially, you know, speedrunners, none of that. So the general things in what you can do with the content is pretty much still intact. There's nothing too drastic here. Game footage posted online. You should not share game footage online without adding your own video or content unless the game console or device permits sharing of game footage. You may not split our game content into components, visual, vocal, in-game elements, etc., and distribute such components as separate content. So basically they're just saying that you have to include everything. You can't be like, oh, here's Breath of Fire 4 and we're only listening to the music of Breath of Fire 4. They kind of just don't want you to split much of anything. It's pretty straightforward. You know, they don't want any of that. Just, if you're playing Breath of Fire, you need to play Breath of Fire. If you're playing Street Fighter, you need to play Street Fighter, and not readjust things, if you will. Kind of go a little bit further into it, like the first part of it is just, you know, it's pretty straightforward. You should not share game footage online without adding your own video or content unless the game console or device permits sharing of the game footage. So basically, they don't want you to swindle content. This is pretty typical, you know, no swindling content, you know, unless you can get content yourself. So maybe tournament footage or whatever, or footage from other areas. They wouldn't want you to swipe that on top of splitting the game content once again. So no music on YouTube, etc. There's this seems pretty straightforward, and I can see how some people might see it as kind of vague too, but I think it's pretty straightforward to me. Not official Capcom videos, the next thing. fan content may not be promoted as official Capcom content. So this goes back to, I don't know if you guys know of the quote-unquote Chinese Devil May Cry 5, trailer. It was basically some Chinese mobile game and a character that looked very similar to Virgil. And a lot of people took that as Devil May Cry 5, and it was not DMC5. The way it was edited, you could have sworn it was DMC5, especially with the way, I don't know, it just looked very, very similar, with the not quite Virgil character. So yeah, this I can understand. There's definitely a lot of people who get baited, or as people love to say, clickbait. People have been clickbaited into some of these official Capcom videos that are not official. So if Capcom makes a trailer, a lot of people tend to basically grab that official trailer and slap it on their channel. Meanwhile, you have other people who do a lot of the same thing, but they splice up the content in itself, and it just makes for a bad time. So there's a lot of people who get clickbaited by it, and I understand what they're going for here. So they just don't want any deceit, so makes sense. Next on the list, we have only Capcom music. Please note that some game soundtracks or songs may not be owned by Capcom, but instead are licensed from an artist or another group. As this varies from game to game, please be aware that music may trigger content flags and potential removal of the video. Game soundtracks may not be posted or distributed separately and apart from the game footage. Goes back to what was said earlier about the game footage posted online, about not being able to split, part of the game. If anything, this is Capcom touching on DMCA. Basically, like, yeah, we know that you're playing said game, but this also was, contracted out by said artist, and said artist might have a copyright claim on it. So be forewarned, we can't do anything about it despite it being in our game. So yeah, there's not much we can do about that. So you're gonna have to hold that. That kind of sucks because it is a part of their game, but I suppose, it being licensed from an artist or another group, as they say, I guess it kind of makes sense. Because Street Fighter V in particular definitely doesn't have like the same composer on it. Like each seasons tend to have had like a couple of tracks made by different, composers and whatnot. So I kind of understand where this is coming from. And I guess as an addendum to this, from something that happened to me on Twitch, I said this on Stream Chat before, where I got flagged on Twitch for using KOF music from KOF 95 and KOF 96. Now, it didn't result in a DMCA strike, but I definitely had parts of my VOD muted out for like Kyo's theme, or the Korea theme in particular from 96. And what other than I'm a big fan of Geese Howard, so one of Geese's theme from KOF 96 got my VOD muted on Twitch. And when I went to research it, it was some Japanese band or something like that. And I couldn't believe it, that this is from KOF 95 and KOF 96 and I was getting hit like that. It's very, very shocking to me. And again, like I said before, it didn't result in a DMCA strike per se, but it did mute my VOD, so I had to delete that VOD in particular. So that's kind of what they're talking about here, is like, even though it may be an old game or what have you, the artist or whatever still have, it's still licensed by them. So if they choose to take action, they can. So that's why they said, like, you just got to be aware it might trigger some flags, whether you like it or not. And it's not up to them to do anything about it. It's just you pretty much kind of have to play trial by fire. Is basically what they're saying. It's trial by fire. And the last part about game tracks not being posted or distributed separately apart from the game, that's going to hurt a lot of like YouTubers who just strictly upload the music for the games. Personally, I don't like this because there's a lot of games in which, I love to listen to Capcom music on the side. There are definitely times where I want to listen to some of these games on the side, and I don't always have access to buying the OST, or there is no OST, to be bought. So having these things on YouTube kind of helps people rekindle that. And I understand that Capcom may see it as, well, you know, you shouldn't do this anyway. Well, it's kind of like, well, maybe you should release soundtracks, or maybe you should put these things on Spotify or something, you know, some way that we can get access to these things so we can enjoy them from the past, because not everything is on Spotify. Not everything's readily available to listen to, you know, because I'll tell you for sure, you know, I love Breath of Fire and I love to listen to the Breath of Fire's music, and there are just minimal ways to listen to a lot of those OSTs without YouTube. So yeah, I don't know. This one hurts just a little bit, if you ask me. Audience appropriate. All fan created content should be appropriate for the audience of the Capcom games. For example, if you take game content for younger audience and make it objectionable, we reserve the right to take it down. So basically, if you go on YouTube and you don't, you know, it's that thing where you don't put in that it's set for, you know, the right audience, the right age group, then they have the right to take it down. Or like a lot less cursing and stuff like that. This isn't too far off from what YouTube's already kind of doing in terms of if you're cursing in your content, then that hurts you with potential, you know, sponsors and ads and stuff like that. So I can kind of understand where this comes into play, but I don't know. I don't think this one is too bad. You know, it should be appropriate, you know. But I know on the other front, this could also seem like if people are bashing the game. I can see how if people, I can kind of see how the other side of this coin is like, well, you're not allowing us to bash your games or speak openly about your games. So I don't really think that's the case, but I can understand why someone would interpret this line in particular that, you know, I can understand how they could take it the wrong way. So I don't know. I would like to believe it has nothing to do with, you know, how people feel objectively about the game. So we'll see. We won't know until they start taking action and people start posting about it. So we'll see how that goes. Spoilers. Any posting or other unauthorized disclosure of game content prior to a game's official release is strictly prohibited, even after an official game release. Spoilers can ruin a fan's experience, and we always aim to avoid them. Understandable. Please be respectful of others and do not deliberately push plot reveals on people who actively avoid learning about them. Otherwise, please offer spoiler disclaimers as a courtesy. This one's kind of compound to me. This to me goes after the people who they lend keys out early to these games for, you know, who kind of break embargo and stuff like that. Avoiding spoilers, that's more of a YouTube thing, I suppose, or if you're actively seeking it. Like if you're watching a lot of footage of, you know, said game, you're obviously gonna get stuff like that in your feed. And I do know a lot of people kind of get that. But what I mean by get that is in like, you get people who get the early access, break embargo on like a burner account, and then they just slap the footage up and, you know, they tag it properly and do the whole nine, and it just looks, you know, pretty much normal, you know, and then boom, you know, spoilers. Some people actively look for spoilers too, so that's also a thing. But I feel like this one's a little tough, if you ask me. Although they do mention, you know, offer spoiler disclaimers as a courtesy. I don't know. I feel like you have to actively be looking to get, you know, spoilers. But then again, sometimes it just appears on your feed and there's, you know, it's based on the algorithm specifically on YouTube. Because I feel like the only way you're really going to get spoiled is truly on YouTube. I know there's stuff on like your phone, like I have something on my phone where it shows me like the news and stuff like that from Google and things that I'm interested in. So I can see it happening there too, but you know, that's just based on your, you know, your habits on watching. So I think that might be difficult to kind of get around, but spoiler courtesy does make sense. So I don't know. So we got through part one with the guidelines, right? Let's move forward. This is going to be kind of a long video. I'm not going to lie, you guys. There's a lot to look at here. This is not like a 2-minute video. All right. So we're at 2. No commercialization. Non-commercial use. We do not allow Capcom content and other materials to be used to make money or to gain any other financial benefit except through permissible monetization described below. You may not limit to paid access, sell, or license your content, that includes our game content, to others for payment of any kind. In particular, we do not allow you to create new content using our game if a paid subscription is required for people to access our specific content. This kind of dips into mods and a little bit on streaming, which they kind of talk about in the next one. But I feel like this is just meant for like mods. Like basically, like if you're modding, I don't know, let's say you're making like a Mega Man X mod or something like that, you shouldn't be charging people for this mod, basically. I don't know how they are about donations, but I don't know. This is kind of tricky, you know, because there are people who do people do make mods of games, and they'll be like, yeah, you know, here's a Mega Man X2, you know, EX or something like that. So they don't want people to make money off of creating new content, you know, if people have to pay for it. Rightfully so. There are people who are out there that do make, like, for example, repro of certain games, right? Like I know that there's a repro version of like Ninja Gaiden out there for the NES where it's based off Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2, and they like, yeah, where they pretty much modded in like an updated sprite palette of like Ayane or Ryu, if I recall right, from next gen Ninja Gaiden. And yeah, it just, and they're charging people for it, and it's like, well, this is a mod of like this game, kind of sort of shouldn't be charging for it. There's also people who also make you pay subscription fees for mods or like Patreon, so I guess maybe they're looking to attack that, which I know that they already kind of sort of have. So, and that's like early Street Fighter 5 days. So this is kind of a tough one, I suppose, but I feel like that's more or less what they're going after. So then we have permissible monetization. You may monetize through partner programs and or advertising from YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or other video sharing services. Collecting voluntary contributions such as through Super Chat on YouTube and bits on Twitch is permitted as long as your video is available for free to the public on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, or other video sharing services. Now, this one right here is, oh man, this one right here, in my honest opinion, I think is pretty important to note for streamers in particular, right? And the reason why I say this is important for streamers in particular, is because there are some fighting game players that don't want to get their content ripped from their VODs. There are some people who just take players' VODs, upload their VODs privately and stuff like that. You know, I've seen it countless times. And it's a reason why they put their VODs on subscription only. This technically is saying that your VODs should be available regardless. Like, you can't hide your VODs now. That's kind of like what I'm catching here. Of course, YouTube, Facebook, all this stuff. I'm not sure how Facebook gaming works, so I can't speak on that, but YouTube is already readily available for free, so it's not really that big of a deal. But Twitch in particular, you know, you're gonna most likely have to make those VODs readily available for people to watch regardless of subscription paywall or not. As I said before, there are people who are content vultures who do stream snipe and snatch people's content, you know, from their VODs if they're openly available. So I don't know, this one's kind of tough if you ask me, but it is what it is. I mean, this is apparently what Capcom wants players and people to do, so be prepared to get those VODs readily available for these people, because you can't hide your VODs anymore now. It's basically the vibe that I'm catching. So let's move forward now into the next realm, shall we? All right, moving forward. impermissible uses. Right, so this is the next area we are at, right? Pre-release content, any posting or other disclosure of unofficially released, unauthorized, or leaked video and other leaked content of any kind in any format is strictly prohibited. Any publishing of in-game content from sources such as, but not limited to, leaked copies of a game prior to its official release date will be removed. We may authorize pre-release content to a select group for media review or other agreed upon business purposes, accompanied by strict guidelines for any content released prior to the official release date. So as you guys know, or if you didn't know, Capcom had a gigantic leak. You know, they were breached, and over the summer last year, we're in 2021 now, right? And basically a lot of their release dates and everything just got leaked. It's all over the place. It's on Reddit. Basically, they were held for ransom on top of many other things, right? So many of their release dates have been put out there. People already know what's on their release schedule now. They might shake it up, but the bottom line is that content got leaked. You know, and whether it was actual content or not is irrelevant. It's the fact that their actual release dates, their business models, their proposals, their whole shebang is out there on the internet right now. I don't know how much of a cleanup job Capcom has done to try to mitigate that, but again, that stuff is readily available out there, more than likely still right now. I understand why Capcom's taking this approach right here with pre-release content, because a lot of their footage, a lot of their reveals have been leaked within the last few years, and it's been pretty bad. I'm not even gonna lie, it's been pretty bad to essentially lose the hype that was surrounding this game and this game's content because someone was like, bah, bump Capcom, I'm just gonna press the go button and put all their information out there, and it doesn't matter anymore, you know. Now, of course, this doesn't excuse Capcom's quote-unquote shady business practices. For example, having DLC on their disc, looking at Street Fighter Cross Tekken. For those of you who don't know, there was a gigantic fiasco around that about all the DLC for that game already being readily available for play on the game disc that was locked behind a paywall. Needless to say, that sent a very, very, very bad message to a lot of people who support their content. So it's, you know, rightfully so. But I don't blame Capcom in this regard, because really they've been getting screwed left and right with their pre-releases and stuff like that, and their whole content, like their post-game content reveals have all been struck like, gosh, dude, they've just been shot at. It's like there's a group of people who are just out there and just ready to just clap Capcom quick, fast, and in a hurry when it comes to their reveals. So I don't blame either side for this, because some people don't like Capcom's business practices, so they just want people to just know in advance, which it kind of sucks because it does hurt the surprise of what the content is. But you know, what can you do, right? It's just unfortunately just the way it is. And they're taking a more proactive approach to stopping those people who are posting this content prior to, right? So that makes sense. But I think that while they still have their strict guidelines for the people that they have, you know, contracts with or whatever for the select media groups, they gotta be careful, in my opinion, because I mentioned this earlier. There are people who just use burner accounts to just put stuff up without care, you know. So they kind of have to be a little bit more mindful of who they're dealing with, just to be certain that they don't do that, you know. But I guess on the same note, it's kind of hard to know. Alright, so next up we have unauthorized usage. We do not allow usage of promotion of third-party programs, including hacking, cheating, or devices that circumvent intended protection of Capcom titles. Additionally, we do not allow Capcom content to be uploaded to a platform for which rights have not been granted, such as the creation of Twitch emotes featuring Capcom content. Now this one, oh man, this one. I think this is the one that I think that this one kind of hurts a lot. I did mention earlier in the beginning of this video that there was going to be something in particular, or a few things in here in particular that will kind of like ruffle some feathers, I suppose. This to me is one of them. Specifically Twitch emotes. I think what Capcom does not seem to understand is that there are characters and themes of their games that a lot of content creators are like, really happy to be around and be a part of. So take for example, for me being a fighting game player, there could be a player that's synonymous with said character. So say Ryu or Ken or Chun, they'll cater their stream around that character with those emotes. So I think, it kind of hurts a player's identity or a community's identity. So let's say it's a community of Monster Hunter players, and they have emotes of, the monsters in the game, or maybe their avatar or things in the game. It kind of hurts, the thing that they are synonymous with, because there's a lot of people who watch these content creators, in particular on Twitch, and they are, they know that this thing is very synonymous with this person or their community. And I think that takes away from the identity of said, content creator, of said communities. And I think that really sucks. I'm not gonna lie. I think that this really hurts because, again, think of someone who speedruns, Mega Man. Let's say they have, Mega Man emotes from the sprites. That really stinks to say, hey, sorry guys, you're using this stuff to make money, so take it down. I am just not a fan of that at all. I think that should go under like fair use. I don't know. I feel like emotes should maybe fall under fair use because, like, I don't know. I just don't think it's that bad. Like, people are not gonna make more than Capcom per se in having emotes. I just don't see it. But I understand that, like, maybe they don't want people to monetize it, but this one just really stinks. I'm not sure how far this goes into, fan art emotes, if you will, because yeah, people really want to use those things, and those characters are just synonymous with these, these people. So I don't know how to feel about this one, other than I'm not a fan. I'm just not a fan of this one at all. I really think that they should reconsider that. At least emotes. I think emotes should be like maybe the only thing to skate by of this here. Hacking and cheating, obviously, that should not be a thing. But emotes, yeah, I guess in a sense it kind of takes away from Capcom doing their own stuff from their own Twitch channels too, so I can kind of see that as well. But like, it's not like Capcom is streaming to make money, you know what I mean? Like, they're not pushing streaming. They may push the streaming of their content per se, but they're not. Capcom as a company isn't a streaming company. Like, they may stream the event, like with Capcom Fighters, for example, but like that's like as far as it goes, They're not really pushing that agenda as far as I can tell. So I don't see the purpose of this one, but again, like I said before, it is what it is. Let's move on. I can spend all day on this. Inappropriate content. Using Capcom titles to create video and other content, including mods that is illegal, racist, sexist, basically prejudice to sexual orientation, sexually explicit, disparaging, promotion of hate crimes, or is otherwise offensive is not tolerated. On a case-by-case basis, Capcom reserves the right to take down content that is found to be inappropriate or objectionable at our discretion. This one makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's all kinds of mods in games that are definitely inappropriate. It doesn't seem like they're against mods per se. Obviously, in one thing previously they mentioned, they don't want people to basically pay for mods. Like, if you're gonna mod, it should be free. I, again, don't know how they are about the donations. There's nothing really explicit about that. But this honestly makes sense. And like I said, on a case-by-case basis, if they see the need to take it down, they would. I mean, I don't blame them. They don't want you know, their game to look this way through mods or through specific mods. Now, I know some people probably be like, well, I don't know about that, you know, and you know, you have to understand that like they're also a business and they have investors, right? And if the investors see that like they're, you know, let's say they're trying to get a new investor, right? And their game has, they try to get them involved with said game or said project, and they go and look up mods from a previous, you know, edition of the game, and they see these mods just by chance, you know, in the off chance they see like, I don't know, nude Jill mod, nude Chun-Li mod, nude Ryu mod, you know, whatever. That right there would probably send a red flag to their up and coming potential investors or their prospects to work with them to help fund the project, or help work with them on maybe the esports side of things, you know, to help maybe do more for Capcom Pro Tour, or do more for any other event or any other game project that they intend to do, or any other campaign. We'll just say, we'll sum it up as campaign. So that could be a Capcom Pro Tour, some new game, some new event, some new whatever, right? Just campaigns in general. All that stuff can get shot down, you know, for them, because their investors can see that this is like, they'll ask them, is this what your game is about? Because you got to keep in mind, not all of their investors understand, you know, the gaming world like that, or they understand the modding world like that. Maybe Capcom understands it, and the people who are within Capcom understand it, but you got to keep in mind that like, this is the one thing I actually agree with, because you do want investors, you do want Capcom to make money to keep investing into the, you know, said projects. Now granted, I don't always agree with their business practice like anyone else. We all, you know, have our reservations, and even me as a big Capcom fan, I do have my reservations on their business practices as well. But I also wouldn't want them to lose potential investments from investors because someone decided to do Ryu nude mod, Chun-Li nude mod, or these random mods that are just really offensive. Like, I can understand that, because it, to me, like I said before, it just sends a bad message to their investors, and I get it. So this actually makes sense. So the fact that they even left it on a case-by-case basis means it's okay for mods. Now, don't take me verbatim here, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just speaking from like a marketing standpoint, because that is the field that I work in, and I understand this part big time. So again, not a lawyer, but I understand this from a marketing standpoint. And you know, when it comes down to making you know, plans and stuff like that, you know, yeah, you just don't want this to like hold you back, basically. So this isn't too bad. This makes sense from a business standpoint. So now we have video capture of Capcom publication. Any posting of video capture of prohibited or digital books and other printed or digital materials published by Capcom or its licensees, such as but not limited to comic books, game strategy guides, collector's edition art books, is prohibited. However, you may use Capcom publication in unboxing videos, provided that no specific content inside Capcom publication is displayed in the videos. This isn't so bad. This doesn't hurt unboxing, but you just can't really show what's inside. Like, people would have to open it themselves. So the unboxing of like said art book doesn't really, I don't feel like there's much you can do here, to be honest. Like, there are people who do unboxings and they do show what's inside, not everything, but maybe a little bit of the content. So I think this kind of falls back under case by case basis. Like, I think if you show like maybe like a page or two, or maybe even like the foreword, because sometimes they may have like a foreword mention, or they may have like a blurb basically that you can kind of read off, and maybe a page or two. I don't think that's too bad, but I think that this to me falls under case by case basis. And again, this makes sense. You know, they make digital art books for you to enjoy, although I do, and physical art books for you to enjoy, but I do also understand that like sometimes these art books may be hard to find, and the only other way to look at them is through like YouTube memes or scans, if you will. So a little bit of a gray area here as far as I'm concerned, but like I said, from a video standpoint, I don't really see this going too far outside of a case by case basis, to be honest. So we shall see. Now we're reaching the end. Lot to look at here, right? General. So we have the last three here. So reservation. Failure to abide by these video content guidelines may result in Capcom taking action to have your video content removed. Capcom reserves the right to change these policies at any time and for any reason. Please note that this policy is not exhaustive, and we reserve the right to object to any use of Capcom materials and to remove such objectionable content at our sole discretion. So again, this goes back to what I said about investors. You know, maybe based on like the temperament of their investors, they might change it, or maybe by the temperament of the people, you know, how people speak out about it, they could also allow them to change it up. There's just many reasons why they would switch it up, but this isn't necessarily bad, because if people feel like they're being wronged, it's okay to speak up about it. So, you know, feel free. Chop it up. Let Capcom know how you feel. Effective video policy. Please note this policy is a guideline for using game footage of our titles. It is not intended to be, nor should be considered as express permission, nor an official license or authorization for you to create mods or derivative works of Capcom titles or content. So they're basically saying, just because we say this is okay, doesn't mean you should do it, basically. It doesn't mean that it's okay. Like, at least they're not saying they're gonna come after modders per se. I think this is okay. It's kind of like, hey, don't do it, but we don't really mind if you do it. You know, it's again a little bit of a gray area. I do think, again, and I'm seeing some of the things that people are saying from Twitter, that like there's definitely there's not enough detail into what is what, but again, it's at their discretion, right? So, link to video policy. Also, please note that we are unable to address individual requests for clearance, so feel free to share the link to this Capcom video policy with anyone requesting details on our policy. If you receive a violation claim from Capcom directly or through video social media platform and believe this is in error, please submit a notice to the applicable video social media platform disputing the violation, and we will investigate on the back end. So this last portion is just basically just saying that, hey, we can change the rules if we want to. It's okay if you do mods, but we don't really want you to. But it's okay, kind of, sort of. And if you want to settle any kind of disputes, just hit them up. So, getting back, it's really not that bad. I think there's a little bit of overreaction, to be honest. I don't know. I really don't think this is that bad. I do think some people might be overreacting, and I don't think that they don't have a right to, as I mentioned before, but I don't think it's Capcom doing anything truly horrible per se. I mean, I just feel like they're at a point now where like they've had their content leaked, they've had people break embargo, they've had so many things go against them, despite, I guess, quote unquote, trying to do good for the player base for Capcom games. So I think they're just putting their foot down and just saying, okay, look, we're not going to deal with this anymore. We don't like this. We've done everything we could. Maybe there could have been more they could have done, but I don't really see them doing anything too wrong here, to be honest. Obviously, the biggest hit would be like the emotes. I think that one really does hurt a lot of content creators on Twitch in particular. The having to make your VODs essentially free now, like even though you're gonna have a subscription, the VOD should be readily available for people to watch if you're monetizing. Does make sense. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like my biggest takeaways. You know, mods are okay, but you know, not okay. Just don't charge for them. You know, still a bit of a gray area with donations and maybe some Patreons, I suppose. But then again, Patreon is, technically speaking, it's still a subscription service, right? So maybe Patreon isn't, you know, acceptable either. Maybe just straight donations is fine. I don't know. There still could be some more definition. There could be some more, you know, citing of like things to make things a lot more clear for what is okay and what's not okay. I think a lot of people would be a bit more happy to have that much more clarification. But I think for what it's worth, them starting out this way isn't necessarily too bad. I think people speaking out about it is good, because that'll allow them to kind of gauge what is okay and what's not okay. So I don't know, we'll see. We shall see. I think that's gonna do it for me with this video. I know it's a little long. There's a lot to unpack here. I definitely wanted to sit down and take the time out and be a little bit more thorough with it with you guys. Let me know how you feel in the comments. You know, what do you think? What do you think? I'll also leave a link to the Twitter thread and a link to the Capcom site where you can check out the policy for yourself, make your own deductive reasoning. I don't know. Talk to me. Tell me how you feel. How do you feel about Capcom changing up their policy? I'm gonna get up out of here. You guys have yourselves a good one. I'll catch you in the next video.